Hello again, and welcome to another Psychosomatic Conversations. We are really grateful that all of you are here online with us and also watching the recording. We are creating this community and it's growing, and we're happy to bring this community to life, to bring awareness to our bodies, to our emotional connections, and the psychosomatic intricacies. And tonight we will be learning about jaw pain and the emotions connected to why that might be happening, and some ideas and tools to help you if that is happening, to kind of help some of that pressure go away. And the beautiful Sean Jago is here with me. Welcome,
Hello,
Sean.
everybody. Thank you. So today's insightful look at jaw pain is a topic that has been brought up for us to explore. And so when we look at the body for how it exists and the introduction of the jaw, we need to have a look at the nuances of joints. So the movement of time and space in a place, they're kind of like handover joints, handover places where we move from point A to point B, where we acknowledge the footsteps that we take. How when we look at joints, joints are all about mobility, the freedom to move, and also what's in the space or in the field as I move. So we know that the jaw itself is a reflection of the knees and the pelvis. So the activity that arrives in that space, like a trigger point in one way or another, the influences that are there that reside behind the jaw are also very relative to the knees and the pelvis. So as we consider the joint, it's sort of like joining sentences that create a conversation, but also create a communication, because it's the mouth. And the mouthpiece is the expression of all that I am, from all the depths of where I've been, where I currently am, and also what I aspire to. So there's a fair amount of energy. And when we use the word energy, I call it content. Yeah, the body will show us the content that is within us. And then we have a relationship or a reaction or a response to that. And it's how we deliver that into the world, how I connect to it, and my willingness to be able to allow that to disperse. What do you think, Christine?
Well, I think the jaw has been a challenge of mine most of my life. Because when I was little, I fell and broke out all the teeth in my mouth. And I believe I've had jaw issues ever since, because I, growing up, would grind my teeth really bad. I would get pretty severe headaches. And I have worn a mouth guard now for probably 30 years, which has saved my teeth, and it saves my my headaches. They don't, if I don't wear it, they come. And so I have a love-hate relationship with my mouth guard. And jaw pain, when I see it in the body, when I'm working with clients, most often you were talking about the container and what's happening internally, most often what I see in this area is a repression or a holding back of communication over a long period of time.
Mm, gradual
And
build up, yeah.
yeah, and so that's part of why we wanted to do this, because it is a very relevant issue for many, many people. That the pain, number one, which is the message to us that there's something going on. And as we go in today, I'm excited to share this because I think if we can understand maybe even the questions to ask ourselves of what needs to be expressed, what is being held, it's much easier to allow space for it to move, because energy is meant to move. It does move. And with the jaw, the language of the jaw most often is, I'll keep my mouth shut, or I just keep my mouth shut, and or I just swallowed that. I'll swallow it for various reasons. And what happens in the jaw when that is the case is it builds up and builds up and builds up. And sometimes it can literally break down the joint in the jaw. And hopefully we can catch it before that happens, so we can integrate what's happening in the mind and the body.
Yeah, and the relativity of the anatomy, the muscle itself that usually generates the pain is called the TMJ. And the TMJ, you can slightly access it from outside on the face. However, the true access point for the TMJ is inside the mouth. And accessing that point for some is already very confronting, because the mouth is that home of the innocence, and therefore it feels like an invasive space for some. And at the same time, releasing and opening the jaw, it has this liberation afterwards where there's suddenly so much more space in your face. There's a clearing, a very deep clearing that happens with that place.
Sean, do you mind explaining what you mean by the home of the innocence in the mouth?
Yeah, so the mouth itself is when we look at face reading in psychosomatics, the mouth itself is the womb. It's the home of the genitalia. It is also the space where an infant is suckling. Therefore, the mouth itself holds it's the protection space of the innocence inside the mouth. So it's something that is incredibly personal. It can hold a lot of different content across life for what goes on with regards to our own genitalia, but our own nurturing ability. So the mouth itself expresses and comes from our connection with who we've been in this life.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
As we move on here, let me see if I can. Just a minute.
Hello again.
Hello again. Seeing if I can move my screen, maybe not.
That's
so I'm not going to worry about that. So the next part we're going to talk about is emotions. And the question I'd like you to ask yourself is, what was modeled for you when you were growing up by your caretakers? How was that modeled when expression was present? And that often for little children, I think more so in the past generations, I do think it's getting better, Um, the expression of anger or upset feelings was not part of how I would say the average group of humans were raised. You can come out when you're nice. You can come out when you're quote good. I don't want to hear that, especially if it's a no and any kind of boundary. There's no talking back. I'm sure everyone can have some type of phrase that's connected to that. And so children grow up and then we become adults, and our relationship with challenging emotions and or setting boundaries sometimes is very unknown. And
Yeah, I call
it's,
that emotional relationship.
yeah,
And the variety within that emotional relationship. So whether there are some emotions that become deleted, so that are being denied in the expression of who we are as an entire human being, or whether we're being selective with which emotions are acceptable to express. And so when we get selective around it, some of them are locked within us rather than enabled through us. And yet the diversity or spectrum of emotional relationships is that all of them exist within me. Simply just by being human, they all exist within me. My willingness to experience all of them is what creates my own personal equilibrium, my own personal balance.
yes, because when there isn't balance, that's really when I think over time, autoimmune diseases can happen, pain and inflammation in the body happen because that energy is literally not being moved and or expressed. Digestive issues can happen. And the nice thing is there's a lot more research and science to back up the somatic aspect, which I think is really helpful. And as we begin to look at our patterns, so we're talking about emotions and our relationships to that, to ask yourself, what are some of the most challenging emotions that, number one, that you grew up with, that you were unable to express or not given permission to express? And how is that relationship today? Like, what is your relationship with anger? What is your relationship with boundaries and speaking them? Because that can be really challenging for many people. I've certainly learned in my life to become better at it. And I notice for me, when I don't pay attention, my jaw gets more painful.
All right.
It's a very quick response, probably because I'm obsessed with making it not hurt and clenching.
Sure.
But if something's happening in my life and I'm aware that I need to speak up or even feel if there's an anger piece, if I can make room for that through various ways, which we'll talk about later, I know my pain isn't going to get worse and it will settle down. It is that simple.
Yeah.
Once you notice.
Yeah, body symptoms can be subtle and can be more than that. And I think we're also bookends in a way, Christy, because I grew up in quite a gregarious family. So there was that rambunctious expression that became habitual rather than the internal and nurturing aspect. So there's opposing ends of the spectrum there where that hyper expression was more of a habit, but it also denied that nurturing capacity.
Yeah, it is a little bit. It's
there's
on
this,
that spectrum we talk about.
yeah, it's on this, there's a blowout, right? You could be extreme and external, the extrovert, or you might be the opposite end of that, and that's the introvert. And the jaw is the symptom or the balancing agent that shows us where we reside, whether we reside in a healthy position, which is that right in the middle, being able to be both, either, or neither.
And so I want to talk about too, let's put in a few pieces in between there of some of the reasons why it might be challenging for expression. And one of the things can be cultural, and I would call that stoicism, that emotional restraint, that speaking, or I wouldn't say speaking, expressing needs or emotions can be seen as weak or whiny, and have these labels put to it based on how your family operated.
Yes. So the dietary requirement for emotional expression also has my internal relationship at heart, so who I am with myself, and also it's indicative of the role that I need to play and participate with, called my environment. So internal pressure within the jaw may not necessarily indicate that we need to express ourselves, but we definitely need to feel into what is rising within me. Because it first arises within me, and then I have an interaction with it. And then does that need to become fully expressed in the circumstances or the situations that are occurring? Because the answer to that is not always. However, me connecting with and experiencing what is passing through me or rising within me is essential.
And
My interaction
describe
with
that,
my
Sean?
outside world, how would I describe that?
Yeah.
How would I describe that? So there may be a nuance that's arising that's causing discomfort in my jaw per se, because we're talking about the jaw today. So it could create an agitation in my jaw, a discomfort. And therefore, there's a sensation that's being asked to be understood, being asked to be experienced, being asked to be heard. And my willingness to allow the delicacy and the fragility, but also the vulnerability to just listen, just to hear. Yeah, expression is not only about talking, it's about listening. Not only to others, but listening to what's within myself. And the moment that I'm willing to accept, identify, and interact with what's arising within me, there's a familiarity that I'm creating with myself. And that familiarity creates self-understanding, which also extends to the word confidence. So I can know who I am, but I can also define the difference of what is the role that's occurring in the situation that I'm in, and what are my individual needs that denotes my participation of what's going on.
I think that's one of the most valuable tools, is to begin to notice what are the sensations the sensations of sometimes it can be clenching. Some people will feel it in their belly of something needing to move or
Yeah.
be listened to. Our
Yeah.
bodies will tell us. And I think everyone is different in how that arrives, and it does arrive.
And the topic of how we're feeling can be influenced by our own thoughts. It can be influenced by even by where we're going, as in, am I going to meet somebody? Am I headed somewhere where I've been before? What is the history that is there? But also, if I'm with myself, what is my relationship with my own history and my ability to create stability with that? Because there are so many circumstances and situations that create secret spaces within us. Because not everything is for the public space, but yet me with my history enables the security of my day. And sometimes we might see something on the news, or we might hear something on the radio, or there might be a flash thought that happens. All of these are influences and create connections to how we experience ourselves. And we need to notice, does life push us around, or are we able to create a solid space where I'm having an interaction with those components of myself in a secure way? So that way there's what I experience in life is also in my control rather than feeling out of control. And that's a personal practice. There were many times in my life where my life was so in such disarray that I had to relearn how to establish myself in such a way that I can exist in amongst the chaos of what takes place in life. And this can be stable. I don't necessarily need to feel as if I'm being constantly pushed around by my own feelings.
That's key, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That anchor to be able to stand still for long enough to create balance and stability for long enough that it would be no different to being on a bird on a wire and learning how to balance. Yeah, how to, even though there's movement and changeability, I'm okay. I'm all right.
It's kind of like a sacred dance internally.
Yeah, learning how to stand on a tightrope
Mm-hmm.
and know that there may be experiences in the environment, but they don't have to destabilize me.
Yes. And I think that does come with practice, Sean.
Oh,
A lot of
it's essential.
practice. Yeah.
It's essential, yeah.
Yeah. To notice. And once I learned more about psychosomatics, one of the conversations at our dinner table, because that's a lot of times what we talk about, is my son was really young and he is much more introverted. But when he was young, it was a visual response if he was getting upset or didn't feel like he was being heard. his jaw would clench and his lips would turn in, and he
Oh.
would do that, and
Mm.
you could see the contraction in his mouth, and that's an example of one of the things to watch for in this dance. What
Mm.
is your body doing
Mm.
that you could listen to or feel, so you can shift that?
Mm.
And for him, what we because not only did his mouth turn in, he would make a fist, like his body would contract.
Mm.
And he was much younger. I said, okay, let's talk about, what's going on, because this is what I notice.
Mm.
And he's aware of it now, because it's been something that he's had permission
Mm.
to express, and or even to notice. It's not even just with other people. It is that internal piece when he
Yeah.
feels like he can't express or stuck. He's aware of that pattern of the mouth, of the contraction of his fists. And I find with him, if he has some space and time to reflect, like you're talking about, Sean, what is that
Mm.
that's happening internally?
Mm.
Then that energy, that contraction can move, because he gives it time. And
Mm.
it has been a practice for him to pay attention
Mm.
to move that. And that's really what I want to convey. And part of this is helping you understand there's different avenues that we can use when that pattern comes in and the jaw clenches. Often when the jaw clenches, like Sean said, the knees and the hips, sometimes they will lock. Sometimes you'll contract your gluteal muscles. So to really pay attention to your body cues, what's
Mm.
happening in you when there's a piece that is wanting to be felt, seen, heard, whether that be internal or external.
Mm. And our ability to enable that, because that is in us is us.
Mm-hmm.
Enabling that. The clenching is the contraction. It's the locking out. It's the shutting down. Then the part of us or that
Mm-hmm.
would rather not feel what is in us. In conjunction to actually showing curiosity to what is that is within me that wants to be heard, but part of me is denying it.
Mm-hmm.
And where did I learn to deny that part of me?
Yeah, there's many threads that, as we follow them, can go back to a memory of childhood, a memory in relationship.
Mm.
And I think as we follow those back and come into a space of acceptance of those parts,
Mm.
whether
Learning how
there's
to learning how to open into ourselves
mm-hmm.
can feel very fragile and very vulnerable, and yet it comes with such a relief. The deeper sense of ourselves shows up great gratitude when it's heard in such a way and invited to be part of life. It no longer needs to be locked away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's being invited to this living space rather than feel as if it has to be hidden or overprotected.
Yeah, and that can bring in some of the emotions of shame and guilt.
Yeah.
And one of the phrases that, this may sound, it doesn't matter how it sounds, but I think it's so fascinating when I hear, I feel this way, that's not who I am. And to invite the curiosity of, it's a part of you. It doesn't have to be like what Sean is saying, black or white or hidden. Feeling on the entire spectrum, that is part of our human experience. And to be curious and
honest.
and honest about what it is versus shutting that down and not allowing that part of us to be witnessed.
Or asking it to reformulate itself so it's different. We're not here to be changed, we're here to be us.
Mm-hmm. And so, Sean, how would you, as an example, how would you reformulate? How would you reformulate? I feel that there's shame in, there's shame in telling you I feel sad or I feel lonely. To express that versus being happy and grateful and all the good things that we label as good, because I also think sad is good.
Society's preference to what's good, yes.
Yes. So how would you reframe something like that?
I used to have my own personal frustration around desperation. And I recognized that understanding the depth of a nuance that is considered distasteful, inappropriate, inconvenient, obstructive, destructive, was actually about my willingness to learn by what is being offered, even though the power is distorted and therefore becomes something we may not like. There's a lot of power inside distortion. Once understood, becomes a very deep companion that adds to the compassion of who I am. To understand something that's distorted within me gives me the depth of understanding that creates stability and therefore compassion, because I know that could and can and does exist in another human being that stands before me. I'm no longer overreacting to that distortion. I'm aligned with that distortion. And now I'm able to also show others how else to be with that.
Thank you. That's a good example. I would also like to offer, as we welcome those parts of distortion, the parts that we've put away, a few ideas to bring them into awareness could be journaling, writing down how you feel. And I would really encourage you to write down without a filter how that is, to allow it to organically move through you with a pencil, or a pen, without punctuation necessarily. You're just connecting to, I feel blank, and pay attention. The most important thing I can tell you is you pay attention to the contraction, whether it's in the jaw or the pelvis or the knees. Pay attention to that as you write, because your body will allow it to begin to flow and move through you when that door is opened. It knows how to. It is very, very intelligent. When we invite in a process that is particularly geared towards opening that part of the body. And since we're talking about the jaw.
Emotional temperance is what comes to mind. And I say mind because my mind was very determined not to feel unhappy. And I needed to learn the appropriate mental patience to be my own childcare worker.
Yes.
To be able to allow a feeling to freely surface and explore it. Because as it connects with my body and I let it connect with my body, it's showing me a deeper layer of me. And that's where my mind can learn more about the benefits of the undertones of emotions.
Yeah. It is a learning. It is a learning that we are all here to do.
But it is one of those things where my mind just, oh, that's so inconvenient, not right now.
Yeah.
And want to cast it aside, rather than being patient, being understanding, participating, enabling those nuances that my brain had a low intolerance for, because it is emotion, and once experienced and understood is empowering.
Yeah.
There's a force in there that a mind cannot implement, but an emotion can recreate so many things in so many places simultaneously within the soma, within the body, that is ecstatic. It can be very liberating.
So, Sean, let's talk about a few ideas. We have journaling, a few ideas to when we get dysregulated.
Yep.
To come back, a couple things to come out of the loop that creates the dysregulation. Sometimes it can be a story that we continue to tell ourselves.
Yep.
Every
or
day
get
in the
trapped
shower.
in or get lost in. Yep.
Yes. And or something happens and we have an activation. So what are some things, and we'll go through a few triggers, yes, that.
And on that word of triggers, we acknowledge Linda today, who can't be here, but yes.
Yes.
It's one of her favorite words.
So let's talk about some things that we can do to regulate again.
Yes. And regulating was a bizarre concept for me, individually. It wasn't something that I was taught, shown, or even saw. I didn't even realize that was a thing. So I used to be this unwielding individual that would swing or stay or become addicted to particular preference of feelings rather than the entire diversity. So regulating, and it's really interesting. I have a lot of friends with children, and I'm noticing that in childcare centers, they're teaching the children how to regulate. And I'm like, oh my God.
Which is amazing. I'm so glad.
Why didn't they tell us that? Why didn't anybody teach me that? Because to regulate was to only behave in a particular way.
Yes.
That's not regulating.
No.
That's enforcing. It's not regulating. Regulating is inclusion of how I feel, but it's also that opening up, have a feeling, notice it, enjoy it, appreciate it, fully express it, and then come back to that point of non-active containment. Yeah, to be no longer over expressive, yet not shutting down either. Yeah, to regulate is to balance that point of in between, to be not one or the other or neither. Yeah, to regulate. And that's different for each of us. But of course, with psychosomatics, we understand that to regulate, we need to know what is occurring mentally, what's occurring emotionally, and what are the sensations physically. Yeah, we need to stabilize all three levels to be able to be aligned in the experience of what is to regulate. Yeah, if my mind is still flinging itself and opinions all over the place, it's not regulated. If my emotions are still, it's not regulated. If my physical body is rattling, it's not regulated. So to regulate is to understand all three levels and maintain contact with those three levels of ourselves. Because they are independent of each other in one way or another, but yet they all occupy the same space.
Yes. That sounds so simple.
Physically is something that for some, they go for a walk.
Yeah.
It just seems to happen for them because that's their physical application brings about a connection to that place or space that creates a comfortability. To emotionally regulate takes quite a bit of breath. We need to come back from where we've been. We need to know that we've been somewhere first, and we need to come back from that and to come back to a point of self-compassion or self-connectedness, self-appreciation, self-kindness. And then we need to learn how to calm the unwielding mind so it can focus on me rather than its attitude.
Yes, because you can get hijacked by your mind.
Yeah, centeredness is a practice of connectivity on all three layers. That's what I love about psychosomatics is that you might have one layer that's more challenging than another. You might have two layers. If there's three or more layers running in separate directions, and we've got a lot of chaos going on that we need to learn how to stabilize, and we have to teach it how to stabilize. And stabilizing isn't silencing. That's enforcement. Stabilizing is calming each of those fields.
Yeah, and noticing what works for you.
Feeling and a sensation.
And we do have some notes that we'll be sending you on some of the notes. There's some ideas. Sean just talked about breath work. And breath work is a great one that brings awareness to the body. It begins to slow down the mind. And in that process, we're more able to feel our emotions. Another one that we have in there is dance and movement.
The body.
Yes, because the body, if we don't move it, that is really where contraction and pain can come in. over years and years, that is what creates dis-ease and pain, is the lack of movement and staying in that freeze or fight state for years.
Mm.
Thank you, Angie. And it's one of those, I would love for you, if you are challenged with pain in the jaw, to try some of these out. Being in nature is also a beautiful exercise to notice the sound outside. Notice the temperature on your skin. Notice your feet literally on the earth, to slow down the processes of the mind and come into the body. As you come into the body, that's where curiosity can begin to open about how am I feeling? And allow those three parts of us, the mental, emotional, and physical, to begin to integrate. And welcome the movement of the three together versus forcing one out, which sometimes tends to happen, or get rid of. That's another phrase. Just want to get rid of it.
Make it go away. Yeah.
Yes. And unfortunately, that isn't how it works. It's a matter of creating an invitation for noticing.
Inclusion.
It is possible, I believe, to learn the practices for you and find out which ones work the best, so you can move that energy out of your body more often and have it be a relationship here versus the mental space trying to control what's happening here.
Or rearrange the pieces externally so it suits us, so we no longer are affected by it.
And what do you mean by that, Sean?
It's kind of like a manipulation. We believe that if we change the pieces around us, we'll no longer feel the way we do about it, and therefore apparently we'll feel better.
Yes, that doesn't work either. It does temporarily, and it feels really nice, and then it's
when
still
actually
there.
when life bumps us, and I use the word bump because it's kind of like jars us, and it's asking us to interact with it. When we interact with something, we need to notice, what are we creating as the nuance in that interaction? Yeah. As a child, and something would startle me, did the environment come in, soothe, reestablish, and encourage me? Am I doing that with each component of my environment? Am I creating regularity where I go, both within myself and within the situations?
Awareness.
Conscious awareness.
Yeah. It is our ally, and I think it offers choice. And sometimes part of the clenching is because choice wasn't there. And so
correct.
we're teaching the self that choice is part of us, and that we get to make a choice. It isn't about someone else giving us permission for a choice. The more
just
that we
because growing up, life didn't appreciate all that I am, doesn't mean that all that I am can't be appreciated now.
Exactly. And that's the practice. It really is. That is the practice of What choice do I make now to take care of me in whatever capacity that needs to be, to regulate, to come out of the looping, to take better care of my body? These moving parts, we get to choose. What's our next step to help bring our systems back into balance and regulation?
Yes, the role of who I am in my own life.
Yeah, which is powerful.
And terrifying, but
Yes.
powerful.
Can be both. Can be both.
They're only spectrum views, right?
Yeah.
Because it's what I love about working with the jaw is more often than not introducing people to their feelings, introducing an individual to a feeling that resides underneath, that they need to be held in order to experience, and to be held so you can experience the intensity of who you are underneath only shows us how we grew up. But it also shows us what we desire and what we require. And we can learn how to maintain that connection for ourselves, not just by a practitioner releasing the pressure, but by you as an individual acknowledging how to access that pressure.
Yeah. And that's trying out a few different things.
Yeah.
And we'd like to.
I see we've had a few people jump on board just now.
Yes.
And just to acknowledge to those that have just joined us, we actually started at 9 a.m. I know there was some confusion with some of the links and things. You are part of this group and you will receive the recording. So my sincere apologies for any confusions created. We will iron out those quirks next time, I promise. But yet you will receive the recording for where we've just been.
Yes. And we want to open it up for questions. If you have any, please feel free to unmute and or you can put it in the chat. Are there any questions that you have concerning what we talked about, concerning jaw pain, questions that we can answer?
What's been your
Comments?
experience of jaw pain? Is it something that's occurred for you and with you? Jaw pain is most certainly can be debilitating. And what also fascinates me about it is that we often realize it in those waking moments, and it's been building whilst we're asleep. And sleep is a place where the body is revealing itself unto its own world. And so that pressure that's building in your personal space has an effect. And it's about recognizing the sensation or the emotional growth to comprehend something that's disturbing us underneath. So we've had some messages in there. American dentists push night guards for the mouth to prevent grinding. And after a long while, I tried it and realized it relaxes my jaw by morning. Yeah, and it's nurturing that space. So that space has something to lean into rather than recreate that pressure in the back of the mouth through the jaw. And it's a protective experience. So we still know that those nuances are still running in the background. So those nuances that are still running in the background is also part of our own nervous system. Emily's got her hand up.
Because I feel like I'm at school.
I know, right? It's bizarre, isn't it? There we go.
Yeah, I got two different emails, one that said 5 and one that said 6. So I'm so sorry. But
Don't need to be.
I
We
had an
apologize.
experience just recently about a jaw, and I wanted to share it and see if I gave the right direction.
Great.
So my daughter had recently been to a therapist, and a very horrible traumatic experience that she recalled in regards to my ex-husband, who is awful. And she was having a hard time remembering the incident. And she called me up and she said, I need to see the dentist. And I said, tell me what? And she said, my whole right side of my mouth hurts, all the way to the back of to my ear, to the front of my face, just the right side, all my teeth, my whole mouth, everything hurts. And I said, I don't think that's the dentist, because I don't think a dentist is going to fix your whole mouth. And so I spoke with her a little bit, and I said, tell me what's been going on. Tell me what recently happened, because it seems like maybe it's something that's happened currently, something that's happened about some man or some issue. I didn't know that she'd been going to this therapist, and she'd recently become engaged. So I was a little nervous in that arena. And so as she started talking to me, she retold part of this story of this violent attack of my ex-husband. And as she was talking, I could see like her mouth would like get smaller, and her lips would kind of curl. And her whole mouth would get very, very tiny. And she has a tiny mouth anyway. And my suggestion then for her was to either try and talk about it to somebody, preferably her therapist, or to write down what she was feeling, because it was going to get it out at some point. And I remember Christy saying, when you have a tiny mouth, that you should do the thing, because it helps your mouth. Yes. That it helps your mouth get ready to start speaking. And about 3 days later, she called me back and she said, I think I had been grinding my teeth. I think I had been really afraid to ever talk about this experience. But because I had been able to write about it, and because whenever I thought about it, I would make the raspberry face, I don't have that pain anymore. And so I just caught the tail end where you were talking about emotions and holding on to it. So could you maybe a little bit of repeat on, help me out on that?
So what I notice about some of the nuances behind what you're talking about, obviously your daughter's life situation and relationship change is what's activating what's been in history. Yeah. So
yes.
With man and men for her, because of her new relationship, her new dedication, her awareness of who now stands before her, and that in itself creates the healing, the reconnection of what was in the past to come forward to be released, because it no longer can be held.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yes.
It can no longer be held in the body. It's been compelled to come forward, so she can appreciate the man that's before her now,
Yes.
Yeah, which disturbs history or displaces history, which creates a healing.
Okay, perfect. And her person, her fiance person has really stepped up, because I mentioned to him also, I said, she might have to talk to you about this.
Mm.
And you might have to just breathe through it, because it's not going to be a pretty picture.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
what it shows us is that he brings forward a space that she originally needed or desired. That's
Yeah.
why history can now be moved.
I know I originally thought he was a twit, and now I have to
Just
like
by
him.
being him. Just by being him. Thanks,
Yeah.
Emily.
Thank you, Emily.
It's a fabulous movement. Yeah, it's great to see life restoring itself
Yeah.
naturally.
Well, thank you for your help. When she showed up, I thought that isn't gonna, it has nothing to do with the dentist, honey.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
good advice.
I'm just going to go back across to the messages just because there's a few there now.
Yeah.
Barbara was talking about a friend of hers that's had shingles. So shingles is in the system, its thread is dread,
Yes.
and therefore the fact that this person, her jaw has dropped, and you've heard that before, oh my God, my jaw dropped. That in itself is the shock inside the dread, which displaces things relative to where the shingles is on the body, tells us more about the individual's experience, but also to the jaw is a muscle. Yes, it's bone, but it's held by muscle, and therefore it can be brought back into position. When the nerves have been injected, when I say injected, they're experiencing such a disturbance, right? A disorientation. It will take a bit for that to come back online. Very similar to if somebody has Bell's palsy. That's also a nerve-orientated situation. Similar to shingles, but quite different in its viral approach to what happens inside of the body. But that too can come back online and the face can reestablish itself. Gail, what if I am disconnected from my emotions and unable to experience them? Body sensations do not necessarily lead to that awareness. What are your thoughts? Depending on which country you're in, Gail, have somebody hold you. When I say hold you, whether that's through bodywork, sacrocranial, to reestablish ourselves emotionally, tells us that at some point something has impacted us, and therefore we feel separate from parts of ourselves. And to reunify, to reconnect, is to be held appropriately for you to be able to, for those pathways and neurons to reconnect.
And
Christine?
sometimes in that connection, there is the movement of emotion in that. And that can be a little scary and frightening, because if they have been disconnected for quite some time, it can be confronting or scary. And the beautiful part about being held, like Sean said, in a body work session, for example, is the allowing of that to come up in a safe way, to be witnessed by both. In that witnessing with someone, I also believe that is really where healing can happen, because it's a surge. It comes up and it relaxes, and it moves a pocket that has been stored for probably years and years through the jaw and and usually through the throat and shoulders as well. And it takes the surge out of the body, which will create reconnection.
And we ask you, Gail, that you reach out to either myself, Christy, or Linda. It's an intimate topic, and when I say intimate, it's something that is very individual, that is a specifically self-relating experience that is influenced by history. So please reach out to us. Robin's saying thank you. Yep, she had to jump off to a basketball match. And how does tinnitus relate to the jaw? Hi, Gail.
Yes, I've got to run. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Gail.
Take care, Gail.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Christy, would you like to, as I know Robin, would you like to share part of your understanding with tinnitus and the jaw?
Yeah. So tinnitus and the ringing in the ears, never pleasant, quite horrible. There's many,
And
many
has
people.
a scale.
Yes. And it so depends. The clients that I've worked with through the years, so depends on their stress level of when that frequency goes up and when it comes down. When it goes up, the tendency for people is to automatically contract and clench the jaw because it almost like takes over feeling because it's so loud and the body's responding to that frequency. And the clients that I've worked with that body work is very helpful. Some cranial sacral work to open up the head, to open up the jaw, to help take some pressure off of the nerve. It's, from what I've seen, it's something that is managed. And managed meaning taking care of yourself, managing your stress and your physical body in such a way that if it comes in, like we were talking before, if that frequency gets louder, that is a message for you to check in with yourself and ask, what can I do to lower this frequency, which usually is quiet, might be rest, might be, sometimes tinnitus can affect the sinuses as well, cleaning out the sinus cavity. But what is creating the frequency going up that high? Sometimes it's the mental looping that can happen. And the stories going again and again. Tinnitus, one of the energetics behind it is, what do I not want to hear? And it doesn't mean that always. That's one component of it. So have that be one of your barometers. If you have tinnitus, what is it that helps? And I would try a few things and have those as a resource that you are taking care of you when the frequency goes high.
Yeah.
Because it's not pleasant.
Thank you. Yeah, it has its own unique influence. Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Leanne. She's got some personal stories, jaw pain and shingles, if anyone's interested. Come and say hi, Leanne.
Yeah, hi, Sean. Hi, everyone. First of all,
Hi.
sorry I was late, but
Okay.
I was a bit confused about the time because originally it said 9, and then when I got the link, it said 10.
And
So I thought, okay, well, I'll go with the link time. So sorry about that.
We're
So
sorry.
We're
because
sorry.
that was-
That's on us.
That was our complication.
Yeah.
Apologies.
I'm sorry that I've missed all the fantastic information, but I noticed
Well, you
it's
will
been-
get the recording, so
Yeah.
you can go back and
That's awesome. I'm not a psychosomatic therapist, but it's something that I've been really, really kind of drawn to for many years. And as soon as I complete my Bachelor of Health Science Naturopathy, I will be joining the ranks.
Wonderful.
Yay, we look forward to you playing.
Yeah.
which is at
Love a
the end of December. So yes.
Good for you, Leanne.
See you next
Yeah,
year.
yeah, Thank you. But I'm also a clinical reflexologist, so I kind of know a little bit about the
Woo!
body. And I've done
Go,
the
girl.
face reading with Linda. Is it?
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Congrats.
So I'm a foot reader as well. So anyway, with my own
Whee!
personal experiences, I can relate to the shingles shock that you
Mhm.
mentioned before, because I've had shingles and I've still got the scars here,
Mhm.
and it was a shock. I can relate to tell you the exact time that something's cracked in my head through shock,
Activated. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then the shingles came the next day,
Yeah.
and it was actually in my head, and that's where the shingles were. So so yeah, and they were
Yeah, their
heading down to
locality is very
yes, yes.
specific.
So and it was dread, related to dread. So Sean, I
Mhm.
back that up 100%.
Yeah.
The
It's not
other
a
thing,
pleasant experience, nevertheless.
No.
no, but it was misdiagnosed. This is way before I began my natural
Oh,
journey, and it was
got it.
misdiagnosed by a doctor
Mm.
as some eczema rash, and so I wasn't getting the
Mm.
treatment for it, and it was heading down
Mm.
towards my eye, which is can be quite,
Yeah, it does.
bad.
Yeah, thankfully the medical industry can be a beautiful match with
Yeah.
shingles and many other things. But yeah.
So anyway, with regards to the jaw pain,
Mm.
I do have a personal experience. I have severe chronic degeneration in my right TMJ joint, which
Mm.
was really a shock to me. But how that came about, my discovery of that was once again, a shocking thing for me was I was my carer for 11 years for my elderly mother who's lived with me. But I have a sister who unfortunately sits on the throne with the devil. And she tried to, well, she did. She interfered with my caring of mum, and sent me a letter threatening legal action and mediation and all the rest of it. And that was such a shock to get that letter that the next day I woke and I could not move my jaw at all. And I was on soup for the next 2 weeks because I had basically had immense
Couldn't open your
pain,
mouth.
and no movement.
Oh.
And so I went to I went and had an X-ray, and I was shocked to find out that I did have severe degeneration in my right and starting on my left. And I thought that this is stress that I must have been holding in my face for years
Yeah.
and not realized it. And then when everything culminated and came to a head with that letter, it just hit me to the point where everything just locked up.
Yes, to the bone is the statement. To the bone.
Yes. And anyway, her interference led to very rapidly my mother's passing. And then 3 days after we buried mum, I got my first legal letter. So I've gone through a whole year of legal matters with my sister as well. And I realized then that I must have been grinding my teeth from the stress, because I didn't realize it at the time, because even though I was holding on to that stress, I was just getting on in life.
Right.
But the surfaces on my teeth on my right side is a flat top and bottom.
Yeah.
So there was, and it was the dentist that pointed that out to me. So now I have a splint that I wear every now and then to try and stop that.
Degeneration. And when you say degeneration, are you referring to the bone?
Yes, they said there's
Yes.
not much.
So-
It's like almost bone on bone.
Yeah. So
But-
degeneration of bone occurs due to the minimal amount of oxygen at the depth of the bone.
Okay.
So that is what occurs with hips, knees, ankles, wherever, next, bone, right? Bone needs oxygen. Oxygen is brought to that place or space through the circulation and therefore the movement of that place or space. So minimal oxygen is a deprivation of life. So that's when
Okay.
you get that degeneration that goes on. And degeneration is something that needs to be managed. Can it be restored? Can it be replaced? There's a whole lot of relativity inside of that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we're aware that oxygen needs to get back in there, right? And to get oxygen back in there is to enable movement. So your daily practice with your jaw, your interaction with your jaw, even working inside your own mouth is about drawing oxygen into that space or place.
So jaw exercises and
Yeah.
Singing. Yeah, that movement and opening of the jaw. Because over time, you will have, part of the body will have become comfortable or gotten used to minimal movement of that place or space. And you have to maximize that place or space.
Well, yes. And I think I had not realized, because I was obviously hanging on to that stress, because my sister had been kind of like a demon knocking on my door for the past 11 years. And then she actually opened it with that letter. And I think I was just holding on to that stress of when that day might come.
It's a long time.
And then when it did, it kind of exploded in my face.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen that happen a lot, like with shingles, Bell's palsy. There's a whole lot of different ways in which the body compels itself inside of those dramatic situations. And then the restoration is also part of the self-relating. So that recovery period is something that can become quite sacred as an individual reconnection.
Yes.
Ourselves.
Yes.
Because that's essential.
Yes. Well, I did put in a clause.
Impact.
Yes. Well, I did put in a clause in our legal agreement that she would never come into my life again. So I don't have any pain in my jaw now, but I just want to, I really just want to start the healing process and restoration process of past damage.
Thanks, Leanne.
Yeah,
You'll
We look
enjoy
forward to seeing more of you next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.
I'm going to take the recording.
I'm going to take 6 months off just to recuperate from the stress levels in that. But then yes, I'll be looking to just enter into this.
Yeah, great.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Leanne.
Thank you for allowing me to share.
Oh, pleasure. And we apologize, of course, for any confusion that's been created by today's weirdness of technology. But of course, rest assured, you will all receive the recording.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we will get it right next month.
These things happen.
Go back into
They do. Thank you for being patient. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Our time is up tonight, this morning for some, and we would love your input. If there's questions or topics that you would like us to discuss, because we'll be doing this once a month, ongoing, please put it in an email or message us personally. It doesn't matter how that is done, but we are creating this for community. So please feel free to add questions.
And the new email that we have is called Psychosomatic Conversations @gmail.com.
And that's how it will show up from now on in your
So
email.
Please, if you want to reach out, want to connect, please do so via that email. That would be fine. There are 3 of us popping into that inbox. and having this quiz. So let us know. So I
Yes.
apologize for those that feel like you've missed out, but you haven't really missed out. You're just receiving it afterwards, and
Yes. And
we'll get it right next month, I promise.
we will. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We so appreciate you.
Sorry
showing
for
up
some of
today.
you that's been so brief today, but
Yes.
Oh.
Send you the recording soon.